the whole concept of flattening the curve, right? I mean, this is again from the purely epidemiological perspective. The curve referring to the curve of the infection caused by this COVID-19. And why is it so important that we talk about flattening the curve, or why not we just allow the curve to to say? Because the curve really means that it reflects on the what we call the severity of infection, okay, transmission of infection, and swiftness in which number of cases can actually populate the country, and the inability of a country to cope with this. So this is the whole notion of flattening. So what I'm going to cover today is that basically, again, very few areas that I think are key to the discussion today. Number one, just looking at some statistics globally in Malaysia. Secondly, we look at on the impact on the economy in Malaysia. What happened to the economy in Malaysia? I suppose this will be an example of impact of COVID-19. We can look at the world economy, but I think a good example looking at the focus economy, and we learn from it. And then we look at the curve itself, all right, and the need to flatten the curve. And the last one, of course, on why it is so important to prevent this COVID-19. Okay, why is it so important to prevent it? Because prevention here would include element of a control, right? Control and so on. And then finally with conclusion. All right. So as you know, we have this what do you call this? It's almost a daily thing, this calculation of number of infected cases per capita around the world. Okay, this is the latest. Today is 30th of August. Okay, and of course tomorrow is our Malaysia National Day tomorrow. But this is on the 20th of August 2020, right? Basically, this is just to show you in a very broad way, okay, in terms of the distribution of the number of infected cases per capita, right, around the world. As you can see, the darker colors will reflect the more severe one. Okay, these are the one which are more than 30 cases per 1,000 inhabitants, right? And the less severe one, you get to almost no cases. As you can see, the number of cases seem to predominate in North America, in South America, especially areas in Brazil and so on. Okay, and then you can see also some part of Europe, all right, and as well as extending into what we call this Eastern Europe and so on, right? Coming down close, then there's a big number there in the Middle East, in India. There's one part there in South Africa and so on. So these are basically the overall global distribution of COVID-19 cases around the world as of 28 August 2020. And this one is to show it, again, I couldn't show the color down there, but this is to show the number of total confirmed cases per country, right? These are confirmed cases. Again, you see the similarity in the trend, okay? In America, you can see easily the big trend in America, in Brazil itself, okay? And also in South Asia, you can see there, in India, big numbers, okay? So these are the three ones. And of course, in Europe, is reeling from the number of cases and deaths in Europe as well. So, and as well in the around the world, all right? We can see that the trend is similar. Now, looking at the specific countries, okay, in terms of the cumulative confirmed COVID-19 cases, okay? And this again, for information, right? These cases is limited by the number of testing that's done in the country. So depending again on countries, countries with mass testing done, like in Europe and so on, they can easily pick up number of cases. Countries who have a lower resource constraint or resource, they may have little bit of pickup. So again, these are some of the constraint of picking up cases as confirmed cases. Again, you can see the top there, US, easily passing the 1 million mark, okay? US, Brazil, okay? This number one. And then Russia, okay? And then the rest below that, and so on. And somewhere around here where Malaysia is about close to 10,000, you got 10,000 plus, okay? So these are the distribution across the country, right? Okay? And these are the dates in the 100 confirmed case. This is plotted on the logarithmic scale. And looking at the new cases for the top 7 regions in the world, again, you can see that from here, you can see that there's South America, all right, North America, okay, and also this South Asia, okay, the three region which seem to predominate. The rest are all almost below 20, close to 10,000 or below 20,000, right? Below that. Similarly, here is the new cases, 19 daily for top region again. Can see, right? A similar trend. Okay. So it seems that there is a polarity in cases, right? Cases seen in North America, cases in South America, particularly in Brazil, and also cases seen in South Asia. Okay. Coming closer to Malaysia, all right? Coming closer to Malaysia. Sorry, this is Malay, in Malay, right? Again, I'm picking up the latest 28th of August, right? The number of cases here, we can see 9,306, all right? Number of deaths, 125, still remain 125, okay? New cases, 2 digits. Actually, we are lucky in the last 1 month or so, we have 1 digit, but now become 2 digit because of these new clusters in Malaysia, all right? Number of discharges, happily, is 9,000 plus, and still in the ICU, 8 cases. And you can see here from the specific location, the biggest numbers are still in the state of Selangor and the federal capital, Kuala Lumpur, right? Selangor, as you know, recording 2,164. Kuala Lumpur itself, 2,565, all right? And so these are the biggest clusters. And then, of course, the rest you can see distributed elsewhere. Okay? In Sarawak, less than 1,000, and then in Sabah. So basically the numbers are almost we are inching towards 10,000, but we still are able to contain this thanks to our frontliners, to our very proactive strategy by the Ministry of Health, and together with all the other agencies that are involved in the struggle and the fight to contain the virus. And again here we look at the numbers. Here on the right side, you can see the confirmed cases, patient under investigation, close contact, about close to 5,000. Okay, and in this cluster cases, we have used your clusters in the Sri Petaling clusters, and the last 1 or 2 weeks we also note few more clusters, right? In Kedah, for instance, cluster in Kedah, clusters in Johor, and so on. So clusters actually going up because I think because of the little bit of relaxation on our movement control order. People tend to ignore, and then people tend to assume that life returns back to normality, right? Yeah. Surveillance, we have about 271 from surveillance itself. Okay, from surveillance. So these are the very important distribution of where we get our cases. And then we have this wave. These are the waves that we mentioned, right? We have the first wave, second wave, and the numbers, right? And these are scattered throughout over the months. Okay, so this is where I think recently I think one of the strategy by the government that they will extend this MCO until end of December. This is the latest that I saw, because of this the fear that there are this small wave, and because of the super spreaders meaning the number of cases which are able to spread rapidly, especially the recent clusters in Kedah and so on. And therefore, government have taken the proactive step to renew the movement control order until the end of the year. Right now, that's the some of the statistics on globally and also in Malaysia. And then we want to look at what are some of the economic impact. I mean, the biggest I think concern at the moment is the economic impact, because a lot of people are affected, a lot of business are affected, all right? And people are looking for solution. Government are looking for solution. How best to overcome this problem because of this unprecedented pandemic that we have not seen before. And looking at number one, what some of the statistics that shown here. This is GDP. This is a prediction by this external source EY. The prediction that the real GDP of Malaysia is going to decrease by 0.05% to right. And again, the proviso is that, or conditional to this, this forecasting is that if the coronavirus pandemic worsens. So that's why I think it's so important that from the perspective of the nation is that you do not want it to worsen, because one, the economy will suffer. Secondly, you will have you need more resources to cope in number of cases. At the moment, we're lucky because hospital Malaysia, especially hospital which have been designated as COVID hospital like Sungai Buloh and so on, they are able to cope. with the cases. We have enough beds, enough for emergency cases. We have enough facility staff, right? And also testing, especially the one Prof. Chong Pei Pei has shown to you, testing of to pick up cases, right? These are all become very big issue in Malaysia now, to test and to pick up and then to isolate them, to quarantine them, to treat them, and so on. So this again, first one. So you can see that one of the prediction was that if this is going to worsen, you can see that the pandemic is going to bring down the GDP. Similarly, for unemployment rate in Malaysia, right? Again, the prediction here is that the rate of unemployment will rise to by 3.5%. Here you can see very easily from this graph here, right? From 2019, okay, from 2019 until 2024, this is a graph. The yellow one is the baseline, okay, and this one, the red one is the pandemic line, okay. So you can see very easily, there is a departure, right, from 2020, right, at the onset of 2020, which is when the pandemic strikes Wuhan in China. You can see there is already a remarkable shift in the prediction of baseline unemployment compared to pandemic this line. Very, very obvious. Now, what are the some other sectors which are impacted by COVID? In fact, we can say that all sectors are impacted, right? It's not just government sectors are impacted, but more so are the private sectors, right? Business sector, private sectors, where we can witness a lot of issue of retrenchment and even for the point of bankruptcy and so on, right? Because these are these sectors which are not prepared for this pandemic. So the first one you can see the most severely affected will be the tourism industry. We have air travel, okay, tourism, hospitality is very much affected. Second one you see is the drop in the foreign trade and supply, okay, supply chain affected by government orders. The third one is the fall in the stock market, okay. So stock market, so those who are investors in stock market, this is the time, not the time to buy, to sell. Maybe time to buy with those investors. And then very significantly is that, and this again affect the whole economy, is that there is reduced consumer spending, right, due to the implementation of the MCO by government. So consumer spending is heavily affected, right? So you find that traditional businesses offering consumer products are affected. So therefore, business have to reinvent themselves in order to stay afloat. So therefore, you can see this the advent of online business in very big way. Online business coming up. Not only business, online business, but also even in education sector. Right? People are jumping onto online delivery of education. Okay, very much a very major change in the method strategy of educational delivery. We almost become fully dependent online, okay, and recently there is of course a mix of brick and click, return back to almost close to so-called near normal, right? And then the other issue again is cash flow, all right? Cash flow is severely affected during the MCO. Okay, there will be permanent or temporary layoff. Some are permanent layoff, as you can see very well. Many are laid off from their jobs and need to find other ways of survival. And again, reduction in the demand and spending arising from unemployment. So you can see these are the sectors that is not unfamiliar, right? I think around the world it's a similar thing, because it's a global tragedy. The pandemic is not an epidemic; it's a pandemic. The whole world is affected, and all these sectors that I mentioned for Malaysia, I suppose, will also apply to around the world. And looking at the degree of impact in specific sectors. For instance here, right? Impact by severity. Again, you can see at the top one is tourism and hospitality, severely affected, okay? Because of closure of tourism facilities across Malaysia, you have to close. Because you cope with the virus, right? You have the closure of the hotel which are almost bankrupt, have to close, and accommodation facility across Malaysia, and also more importantly is that this travel restriction. You cannot go out, you cannot come in, you almost become like a lockdown. That's what happened in China when they first experienced this problem. They immediately had the lockdown. which is turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it really helps to arrest the spread of the disease. And then the second one severely affected is aviation and logistics. All right. Although the fuel price gone down, but the demand for travel was not there. Nobody can travel. People who have made booking and so on have to get back the money, or sometimes may not get back the money. All right. Supply chain processes affected due to MCO, resulting in logistical collapse and business slowdown. Oil and gas affected, okay, because of fall in demand for oil and gas. All right. So and of course, this may be also a blessing in disguise because cost of fuel goes down. People can buy cheaper fuel this time. But again, across the board, that everything is going down, right? And then of course agriculture. Okay, agriculture, because in the slowdown here, we have China, for instance, and Europe. In China, Europe, these are the biggest dominant market now in the world. Okay, so that is a sluggish demand now, and again, production become production, although unaffected, but again, there's a supply demand issue, right? There's not much demand. Therefore the supply become an issue. So what are some of the policy intervention in Malaysia? The first thing is that what the government has done is that in order to confront this the reality of COVID pandemic, government has developed what they call here is an economic stimulus package, right? This package has three strategies. Number one is to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19, right? This is to ease the cash flow for businesses, to assist affected individuals, especially the B40 and so on, the one that really badly hit by this pandemic, and also to stimulate demand for domestic travel and tourism sector. So now we find that some restricted local travel is improved. Number two is to be a catalyst for rakyat-centered economic growth. Rakyat-centered means citizen-centric, right? So that citizen can now spur the growth of economy. So the issue about how to boost household spending, how to create project, especially affecting SME, small medium enterprise. So these are projects that are heavily supported by government. And then the third one is that how to promote quality investment. Okay, the investment is an issue because where do you invest in this time and age, and to provide incentive to encourage private investment because people are beginning to shy away because they're worried. No, so you need to they need to look at quality this portfolio for people to invest. Then again, this stimulus package, because of the amount has been increased. The second one is called a Prihatin means concern economic stimulus package, which is an add-on to the first one. Now it become now 250 billion total, right? And then again, what is the purpose is to stimulate, to protect the citizen, to support business, and to strengthen the economy, right? And again, our Bank Negara, okay, Malaysian bank has represented this package to estimate about 2.8% to GDP growth. So is in fact the stimulus package is adding this economic plus point to the economy. Okay. Again, finally, this again respond to the demand from small medium enterprise. These are the small businesses, right? There's an additional 10 billion. So therefore, in the total, the whole of the so-called stimulus package, the economic stimulus package, come up to about 260 billion for Malaysia. All right. Now for workplaces, what are the things they need to consider for workplaces? I think the first one we need to remember, for workplaces, they need to remember that there are four cardinal principles during this time. Okay, for any workplace enterprise or business that need to survive. Number one, as usual, they put people safety first. Very important, because if people are not safe, people are sick, and you still lose your business. Number one, very important. Number two is that you must have a program to protect your business continuity. I think all sectors, right, business sectors in Malaysia need to have this put into place. Business continuity, even education sector, right, in Malaysia need to have this business continuity. The third one is to build and secure liquidity. In other words, you should not have fixed asset. Asset need to be liquid so that you can use it. Because a lot of time here, at the end of the day, it's about putting food on the table, right? And you need cash. So liquidity is important. At the moment, I think that's the main discussion, even a political side, is about putting food on the table, because that's critical. Rather than buying something else, they want to buy food. And again, the last one, of course, you need to engage stakeholders. All sectors, or what is the Malaysian economy will be the stakeholders. And again, here, when you talk about putting people's safety first, these are the things that they have to do, right? Number one is to steady the ground, to prepare the ground, right, to respond to this. Secondly, transition people into new ways of working. And again, these are things that I think I will not go to detail, but just to mention that, the impact of COVID on personal level and on work are severe. There are people having issue about mental health, and so on. So there are SOP even written to assist with this kind of situation. Safety, health, well-being, care, and job security become an issue, and we need to have clear and transparent communication. And finally, for under economy, this again, to recap the economy, you have these five areas that we need to be considered to build, to prepare, to sense, and to respond to this, to build business resiliency, which is assessment strategy, capability build out, risk intelligent monitoring, risk response procedure, major crisis management. I think these are all part of all businesses in Malaysia to respond to this COVID-19. And again, here again, for this purpose, they need to consider two things. One, on the y-axis, to look at the impact of COVID-19 on the cash need of business, and on the x-axis is to look at the ability of company to absorb the cash need. Okay, because they need to absorb in the long run, whether it's sustainable or whether they end up losing financial capability. And the last is that this building confidence and trust will be a key differentiator. So this is very important, right? To be able to have this confidence and trust, and to prioritize what you do, all right? To plan, to implement, to monitor, and then to respond. Okay. Right. So coming back to the curve itself, right? So basically, the curve is not a very difficult concept, right? The curve itself basically is that, as I said earlier, it refers to the curve of the COVID, right? So in other words, what we can see here is moving up and down, with or without mitigation. Mitigation means what step you put in, right? So why you do this? Because if the curve is flattened, okay, if the curve is flattened, you give time for the country to prepare its healthcare capacity. That's very important, because your hospital must be ready, your staff must be ready, okay, facilities are adequate. Okay? So these are important to flatten the curve, right? And as you can see, the other way is that you will flatten the curve at the same time, put in place increasing healthcare capacity. So dual, okay. So government need also to look into upgrading their facility at the same time, all right, while doing the so-called the mitigation exercise to circumvent this problem. Okay. Now this is again the effect of if you have inadequate mitigation, right? You can have resurgence, and today we have seen cases of so-called clusters. The clusters are nothing more than just resurgence, because we let our guard down. Okay. And when we let our guard down, people become complacent. People take things for granted. All right. Even though now we have a very strict law coming in. Initially, 1,000 ringgit. No, you have to pay if you break the SOP. Now government are thinking about 10,000. I don't know whether that amount could even to bring it down. It could, because people are already complaining it's too expensive. Right. And so without containment measure, okay, without containment measure, you get into trouble. Okay, all right, you can have very serious spread of the disease. Okay, and with containment measure, you are better, because containment here, as you know, all of us know by now, right? This the classic one, it will be on the general measure that government put in, the MCO, the SOP, right? The quarantine, close contact tracing. And then the rest that you're familiar, right? So familiar. You go to establishment, check your temperature, all right? You must wear mask in crowded places, okay? You must, social distance, now we call it physical distance, and also this issue about personal hygiene, washing. That one all of already, important area. Okay, So just to give you some graphic example of what happened when places where you practice social distancing and places where you do not practice social distancing. Okay, on the left side, no social distancing. Can you imagine the number of spread of the corona, right? The so-called the transmission of the corona is very high. It's about 200. Right? Whereas in the right-hand side, you can see corona spread is still there, but it's only about 25 because of social distance. Okay? So social distance has been proven, even in research has been proven to be a very, very strong, what we call this, a predictor of spread of this, of the coronavirus. So in conclusion, I just, because of time again, in conclusion, I just want to again share some of the things that I think most of us are already familiar. So these are the things that countries have what we call this, included in part of the flattening the curve. This lockdown, as I said, in some countries is total lockdown, like China started lockdown. Most other countries may not have total lockdown, but we have some element of lockdown, right? This is what we call in Malaysia, it's called the Movement Control Order, or MCO. And this MCO, over time, it becomes, whenever necessary, government may enhance it because of the number of cases in the particular area. So it becomes enhanced MCO. Some areas where it seems that the numbers are subsiding, you have the semi-enhanced what we call MCO. Some we have conditional, what we call it, MCO. So a variant of the MCO are put in place depending on the contingency of the matter, depending on response, right? And then we also have the recovery MCO, and of course, this issue about quarantine. Other our compulsory quarantine, and when we first started, we have travelers coming back from overseas, quarantine in especially special hospital, what do you call this, hotel, you call it, and some asked to go home, self-quarantine. But again, as I said, being human, sometimes it's very difficult to change old habits. And people have been caught for violating this quarantine period and been fined and being put to jail because of this. Yeah. The other one, of course, important thing like Prof. Chong has mentioned about testing for SARS-CoV-2 testing. Okay. At the moment, I think RT-PCR is the mainstay, right? You don't use serology. The economic stimulus package I mentioned to you, this is important, right? Okay. And then the rest, again, as I already mentioned, the SOP, the physical distancing, face mask, face shield even, right? And the very important thing about practicing personal hygiene, okay? Washing hand, washing face, bathing, and so on. And last but not least, I think later on, one of my colleagues will talk about vaccine. So I don't talk about vaccine here. I leave it to the last speaker to talk about vaccine. So I think, in conclusion, those are the, we talk about the public measures, the economic impact on the country, and what do we do. In Malaysia, at least now, these are some of the current, what we call these challenges, current practice in Malaysia, and judging by the number of cases and number of cases now active, number of cases now in ICU, right, and number of recovery and so on, I think we are on the right track. So we hope that that although the MCO is, I think that that's what the Prime Minister has announced, it will be extended till December 2020. But I think we're in the right track. That we can never go back to the so-called the old ways. We are now back to so-called the new normal. This is something mindset-wise difficult for people to accept. But I think slowly people are beginning to see that the COVID-19 is here to stay with us. It's not going to be anywhere soon to go off, right? So therefore, we need now to live with the COVID-19, with the SARS-CoV-2, and therefore we need to so-called live as with a new normal. So, Prof. Karim, I think, and ladies and gentlemen, that's all I would say for this topic, and we'll be glad if I can answer some questions. Thank you very much.